Scuderia Ferrari needs to recover from the disastrous Formula One weekend spent in the previous round of the season at the 4.361-kilometer Circuit Gilles-Villeneuve in Montreal. In a competitive environment where the Maranello team made every mistake possible, a double 0 points finish hurts and is somewhat frightening. A lot of criticism has been directed at the Maranello team's competitiveness, as some believe it wasn't the tires or an erroneous setup that caused the underperformance in the Canadian Grand Prix. According to our analysis, 80% of the problem was related to the tire warm-up procedure, while the remaining 20% was due to a suboptimal setup under cold and wet track conditions. The opportunity for redemption comes this weekend at the Circuit de Catalunya in the Spanish Grand Prix, a Formula One track that has always been considered a testing ground for every car. It's no coincidence that many teams have always brought substantial aerodynamic update packages here. The layout has undergone changes in recent years, and average speeds have increased. The last section has changed in the line of Turn 1. The last chicane has been removed and replaced with a medium-high-speed right-hand corner. These modifications impact the setup construction as the mechanical compromise is simpler to achieve, not having to optimize between a fast and a much slower section. The first sector consists of a chicane where the high curbs are barely touched, combined with a wide-radius supportive corner 3. Ferrari should be strong in this section of the track, as it is very stable throughout the corner entry phase, thanks to a solid front end. This helps to carry higher speeds at the entrance and apex. On paper, these types of corners benefit the SF-24 single-seater, which enjoys stable vertical load at high speeds. Corner 3, where understeer can occur, should not be a problem for the Italian car. In these types of turns, a forward balance setup is desired. This refers to a solid front end that stabilizes the car towards the apex, allowing for higher speeds. Ferrari will be able to count on this characteristic. The central section of the Catalan F1 track opens with a second bend that is very long, followed by corner 5, the slowest of the track. The SF-24 car will use the rear wing specification chosen for the Imola circuit and tested at Fiorano for the first time. This is an evolution of the version previously used in every race up to the Italian event. The load level will then be adjusted thanks to the beam wing. At Montreal, updates to the Ferrari's rear end are expected, which should increase the available load on the rear axle. Various driver-in-the-loop tests have been conducted throughout the week in order to build the setup around the ideal value. The target is to optimize the load based on the updated characteristics of the car. In corner 5, traction must be maximized. This is not an easy task, as the mechanical setup is oriented towards stabilizing the aerodynamic platform, with the adoption of moderately stiffer elements. The SF-24 is awaiting improvement in this aspect. Returning to the track, we arrive at the fast chicane, 7-8, combined with a very challenging right-hand turn. It is tackled almost flat out, and load is fundamental. While a mechanical balance more focused on the front end is needed to favor direction changes, the mechanical compromise is easier to achieve, so we shouldn't see excessive difficulties. Corner 9, which is very fast, will highlight the best car for this type of section. Ferrari, McLaren, and Red Bull will compete based on the setup construction. A short straight leads to the third sector, which begins with corner 10, a medium speed section. Here, Ferrari can always make use of a very solid entry. Then in traction, it should try not to correct the racing line too much. In turn 11, it is crucial to attack the curb and carry more speed into the next section, an area where the SF-24 can perform well. Then comes corner 12, a medium speed section with a slight outward slope, where finding the perfect balance for Formula One cars is quite complex. Rear stability is severely tested at the Circuit de Catalunya in Barcelona. This is because the rear axle tends to lose grip, as much of the grip is spent countering high lateral forces, leaving little for acceleration, which poses a challenge. Here, too, Ferrari will need to find a good balance with the rear to expand the traction circle, namely the maximum available grip of the rear tires. The track ends with two medium-fast corners in succession, corners 13 and 14. Another key aspect for the Spanish Grand Prix weekend will be the Pirelli tires. Corners 3 and 4 impose a lot of lateral stress on the tire structure, which contributes to rising temperatures. The layout of the Formula One track pushes the compounds to the upper limit of the window. It already does so between the first and the second sector. Therefore, teams will need to develop proper warm-up strategies in order to keep the four tires alive throughout the flying lap. At the braking point of corner 10, a front-focused brake balance will be sought to engage the rear less and preserve it for the last part of the Circuit de Catalunya. In the race, the speeds in the long, wide turns will be reduced to input less energy into the tires. This element benefits Ferrari when considering the setup choice, which generally uses a slightly less loaded wing than the competition, specifically for the race pace. During the Spanish Grand Prix, by reducing the minimum speeds in the more challenging corners, the required load will be less. The reduced downforce will favor top speeds, which the SF-24 single-seater is still working on. As previously stated, this track is often used as a benchmark for the overall performance of the cars due to the wide variety of corners present, which will give us further indications regarding the potential of the Ferrari SF-24 car as compared to the Red Bull RB20, the McLaren MCL38, and the Mercedes W15. Given the presence of two long straights, it is essential to find the correct compromise between aerodynamic load, which is indispensable for tackling the various corners, and aerodynamic efficiency to fully exploit the straights. The characteristic corners of the circuit are certainly turn 3, a very long right-hand bend that significantly stresses the front left with high loads, and turn 14, the last corner of the track that last year replaced the chicane and restored the original layout of the track. Focusing on the temperature data collected from the previous years, the great thermal stress experienced by all the tires due to the varied configuration of the track is evident. The slightly more stressed tire is the front left, especially in turn 3, a long right-hand bend that subjects the tire to high loads throughout the corner, generating a significant increase in tread temperature. The changes made last year to corner 14 have reduced stress on the tires in terms of traction and braking, thus reducing the importance of the longitudinal component on this track. On the other hand, a lot of aerodynamic load is required, with the aero balance shifted to the front to have a more responsive car, especially when entering the slower corners. For this weekend, Pirelli has chosen the hardest set available, C1, C2, C3, to best manage the high thermal stress and high abrasiveness of the track surface. The asphalt in Barcelona is very abrasive, significantly favoring wear levels which are considered to be medium-high at the Circuit de Catalunya. Slightly lower wear is expected for the rear right due to the smaller number of left-hand corners. Particularly critical is turn 3, a high-speed corner requiring significant loads for several seconds, and turn 14, which leads on to the final straight. The expected atmospheric temperature is also high, further favoring tire wear. Therefore, a two-stop race is expected, but some teams could even decide to go for 3 pit stops, despite the fact that the Barcelona circuit is not the easiest to overtake. Strategies and the skill of the mechanics in the pits during stops will therefore be crucial.